I'm Elizabeth K. Wine, the founder and executive director of Music Export Memphis. This is the Export 101 podcast with Josh Shaw of Blvck Hippie.
What's up?
Josh, welcome.
I'm glad to be here. I love the listening lab.
Yes. Isn't this space cool?
It's cool, and I keep forgetting how soundproofed it is. So when I talk, I'm like, I feel like there's no talk.
No,
it's kind of just
dead.
Right
this
there.
This is a dead space in the best way. Yes, yes. Shout out to Memphis Listening Lab for hosting us right here in Crosstown Concourse. We love them so much. So I love that we're talking here physically in person, because in my perception and mind, you are literally constantly touring.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're in Memphis and we're talking is a miracle to me.
I feel like my dad says the same thing about me, and honestly, the same phrase too. It's like, it's crazy you're here and I'm talking to you right now. It's all the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I can give you a hard time just like your dad. That's good. No, but it's great. That's the reason why we're here, right? Is to talk about this touring career that you are building, have built. And so I want to kick it off with, take us back to the very first Blvck Hippie tour.
Oh, man.
Tell us about that experience.
So the first ever Blvck Hippie tour was June of 2019. We called it the couch tour because we were sleeping on couches. It was us and one of my roommates at the time's band, Bigger Fish.
Okay.
And we went through a dude that I met through playing a lot of shows locally. So when I came back to Memphis in 2017, I didn't really know anybody. So I was hopping on a lot of touring band bills when I started kind of gigging. And because of that, I got cool with a guy that I would always help him have support for shows. So he ended up booking the tour for us. It was a 10-day. I think we played kickoff show in Memphis at a really cool house spot that isn't around anymore. Shout out Pagan Mom House. And then so we played Memphis, Nashville. Then we didn't have a show for a day, and then we played Athens, Georgia, and then Birmingham, Jackson, Mississippi, and then New Orleans, and came back. So a really, really short tour. It was interesting. I feel like I never really known what to expect from touring. And I wasn't really I think mentally prepared to deal with touring, because I feel like touring is one of those things where it's if you go into it, I always tell people when they're about to go on their first tour, if you go into it knowing it's gonna suck, you have the best time of your life. You know what I mean? Because
feels like good advice.
Yeah, because then when there's a show where no one's there, or you're struggling to find a place to stay, yada yada yada, those don't hit as hard because you're less stressed. And I feel like I went into that tour kind of expecting more. I didn't really understand how it works, getting people to shows, yada yada, the other parts of it. So it was a decent tour. Made a little bit of money.
Made money.
Yeah, well, not in the sense of we had money that we were paid for shows. Did it offset the cost? No.
Did you turn a profit? No.
No.
But money did come into your hands at some point. Yeah.
I do remember whatever we had paid in New Orleans, I bought everyone's first round of drinks on Bourbon Street, and I was that's enough. That's enough. So it was cool, but it was definitely some growing pains. I feel there was a kind of a switch up in the lineup right before that tour. So we went from a 4-piece to a 3-piece. So it was already kind of weird at the time. And it was before we were really we were a 3-piece, but it was 2 guitars and drums at the time. But then it switched to bass, 1 guitar and drums, and that kind of made things a little weird too. But it was I look back on it fondly. I feel like I had some of the best times of my life, and I didn't really. At the time, I was stressed and didn't have as much fun. But I feel looking back at it now, I kind of miss those old times where nothing mattered and there was no expectation, and I could just spend all day at the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, just kind of relaxing. You know what I mean? So I feel it was cool and definitely a learning experience. But it was that was our last tour before we started probably 2 years later started touring heavy.
Yeah. And so kind of pulling back a little bit, Blvck Hippie. Is Blvck Hippie you? Is Blvck Hippie the band? Is it all of the above?
It started as me. I feel it's going in the direction of being more collaborative, but it's still going to be kind of my project. I feel I've gotten to the point with my drummer where we're kind of 2 halves of the same coin with writing. You know what I mean? So I feel me and him are we've been playing together for 5 years or so. So it's kind of Blvck Hippie is kind of in terms of length and what Blvck Hippie is, I feel especially musically, is gonna always be me. It's me and Casey, I feel But then we're starting to open up with Joe, our other guitar player, and Tyrell's been in the band, our bass player, for a little bit. So it's starting to blossom into something more. But I feel it's still is my like main focus artistically.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be like what I'm feeling, what I'm going through is usually always what shows in the music. So it's kind of like, it's still kind of me, but kind of not. You know, it confuses me sometimes, honestly.
I totally get that. Yeah.
But it did start as like my personal thing where I played all the instruments. And then even on parties, I played everything but drums. And I played bass on one song, but I played like everything. And even like the unreleased record was a weird thing because I didn't play all the guitar parts. So that was already like whoa, it's a new thing. I only played like I wrote a bunch of the guitar parts too, but then I would let Joe kind of embellish, do his own little thing with this, stuff like that. So it's kind of like it's spawning into something that's more collaborative.
Yeah.
Because I feel like playing an instrument is also important, but I feel like playing the musicians is also just as important, and knowing how to bring out the certain things of other people, and that being like more of a way of orchestrating instead of me being like, I'm gonna play this bass part because I can play bass. I can like talk to Tyrell and be like, hey man, how does this song make you feel, where you're going with this, and kind of thing. So it's kind of like broadening where it's still like I feel like my thing, but it's also like our thing at the same time.
Yeah. How does that connect into touring? Like, you know, we're talking to like solo artists and talking to them about specifically, that's a very different beast for them with like trying to go out with a band, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just their name. But with you, it feels like this is a band, like this is more collaborative, but are you just like getting to basics of touring finances? Is it on you at the end of the day? Is it collaborative? Are you all splitting the money? Like how does that look for you?
It feels it's heavy on like, I feel like me and our two managers and stuff like that, and same with like Casey and stuff like that. So it's like, because all the four of us live together, we split living expenses and stuff like that. So I feel like a lot of the financial L's end up on, you know, which is like totally okay. And I feel like I got into the game knowing I was going to be, you know, struggling for a bit, so I don't mind it. But yeah, it's definitely like, I feel like with solo artists, it's like you eat the cost, but you're paying for less people sometimes. But also like I have one of my friends that he's like his band is his thing. It's like him, but he has like bandmates that he tours with, but they're not like, I don't know, it's kind of a different little thing. And I feel like with that, it's like having a band where everybody has the same mindset of like, it's going to suck for a bit. It's a little easier to sell to like your bandmates. It's like, hey, we're gonna do this tour, we'll play this festival, we're gonna sleep on a couple of floors, but like it's gonna be worth it. It's easier to get them kind of bought in. Whereas like if you're hiring musicians, you have to pay them consistently, yada yada yada. Because like if we play a bum show and we don't make any money, no one's gonna be like, I still need my quota. Everybody's like, oh man, that was funny, and then we just kind of move on. You know what I mean? You kind of can move on from it. So I feel like it's definitely like a different perspective, but I prefer this way, honestly. I feel a little closer with it, and I feel like it's kind of like it's more of a family in a sense, where I feel like, whereas it feels like it can feel like a business. Obviously it's always going to feel like a business, but I feel like with the solo artist hiring musicians or even going on your own, it feels more businessy. But here you still have like the businessy part of it, but because you're a band, it feels a little more family like. So it's kind of like starting a family business as opposed to like doing a startup on your own.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and you guys live together, so I mean that is a whole other layer.
Yeah.
So kind of on that same note, like you've already mentioned, you've got two managers. As long as I've known of you and been, as Music Export Memphis has been funding you, you've had a team.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. Building a team, and how are you, you know, getting folks to buy in when you're an emerging artist, like just starting out? So
the funny thing with like, I feel like the concept of building a team. Well, first off, I feel like I went to school for music, went to, you know, did all the music business classes, yada yada yada, and they always talk about it's important to have a team. But I feel like sometimes people focus so much on like clout and years of experience and don't focus on the most important thing, which is someone that actually cares about what you're doing. If you have someone that like has 20 years of industry experience and like all these connections, yada yada yada, but they don't care, after the fourth thing falls and doesn't stick to the wall, they're like, oh, you know, I tried, you know, I did my obligated thing, I got paid, I did what I was supposed to do. Whereas if you have someone that's actually passionate about it, they're just going to keep throwing things until they stick.
Yep.
And I feel like that is basically exactly what kind of helped our semi-trajectory, was just like our managers trying a bunch of stuff that even like they would be telling me like ideas, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to use that, or, you know, I was a punk kid, so I was like, I don't know if I want to use TikTok, yada yada. I was, you know, trying to be all cool, and they were like, hey, let's keep trying stuff. We kept trying stuff. Next, you know it, like things start working, and it's not even like the fact that like we have managers. It's the fact we have managers that care and were willing to put in the effort and go the extra mile. And getting them to buy in, it was just about like they liked what we were doing. Because at the time they bought in, If You Feel Alone at Parties, like the record wasn't even written yet, so they had nothing really to grasp on other than just like seeing two people that like cared and like we're really passionate about this and it's all we wanted to do. You know what I mean? So I feel like you can teach somebody industry stuff.
Yes.
You can teach someone how to book tours. You can't teach someone how to care.
I think that's really true. Yeah, I think that's really true. Okay, so on that note, and like on the booking tours note, and thinking about the team, right? You had the management early on. You mentioned that you had someone who helped with booking the first tour.
So it was.
What has that looked like through over the development of your touring?
I would say that first tour, he didn't fill all the dates.
Yeah.
So that was when, and it was a couple weeks before we went on that tour, and we didn't have Athens and we didn't have New Orleans, and I was like, what were we gonna do? Like everybody already took off work. Like we're all broke. Like we're gonna do this. So I was like, I need to figure out how to book a tour. Like I need to figure out how to book shows. So I mean, I'd book locally, but like that's a whole different beast. So I started just like using every single resource I kind of knew about. So it was like, and then I was able to fill in those last two shows. Like I think the Athens show officially got booked like the day before we were in Athens. Like it was like really at the wire. And I sat there and I was like, I don't ever want to pay someone to do something that I can do if they're not going to do it in a way that I feel like I wasn't taken advantage of. Which, no offense to that person, the person's really cool, and I still love that person. Like, there's zero beef. Like, it's hard to book tours. There'll be dates that you don't get. You know what I mean? But I feel like if I don't get a tour date that I reached out to, I'm okay with it. But if someone else doesn't, I'm always going to be like, could I have done that? You know what I mean? So I'm kind of a control freak. So during that tour, I realized I was like, I can book a tour. Like, I know how to do this. I can just sit down and figure it out. And it's just, it sucks. But, like, I can just be good at it and figure it out. So I kind of took that momentum into the booking a 2.5 week tour, like Northern East Coast tour for 2020. And obviously, that didn't happen. But shout out to, that was the first time we used Export Memphis. And that was when you guys still sent out the money.
Yes.
And that paid for mixing and mastering of Bunk Bed and Roads.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh,
That's great.
It did. It paid for mix and master of both of those, and I'm pretty sure because like we got a really good studio hookup, so we didn't have to pay that much to be there. So it was like that was covered by something else, and then the mixing and mastering was just the Export Memphis money, which was very nice because I was very broke. And just to fill this in, like during the folks that applied for ambassador grants for Music Export Memphis who had tours canceled because of COVID, all that money still went out the door. So I'm glad that it could support the actual creation of your art. That's fantastic. First of all, you just got back from Europe not that long ago. Yeah, a couple of weeks.
So let's just start with that. How was that? And that was the first European tour, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was insane.
And did you book that yourself?
No, so that one, that was the only time we ever had like a booking person, like a booking agent. So South by Southwest last year, it was going to be our first South by, and a booking company reached out. Shout out Francesco. He'd reached out to us and was like, hey, saw you guys on the South by website. Would love to check you guys out. If you guys want to go to Europe, would love to talk, yada, yada, yada. So Francesco came out to our official showcase, and we talked for a little bit, chatted it up. We had already had a pretty full year of touring, and we were planning on recording a record, which we ended up doing in November. So we were like, oh, we'd love to shoot for next year. And then there was someone else that had approached us about booking a European tour, but they said we wouldn't be a profitable person to do because we're like, we only have one record out, hasn't been out, and it's been out for like
couple years.
Yeah, it's been out like 2 years, I think, at this point. Yeah, so like by the time we'd been touring, it'd also be a 2-year anniversary. European like tour markets like when you have new stuff out, so they're like, you're not gonna be profitable. So we reached back out to Francesco and was like, I'm still really down for you guys to do this. And it's kind of funny. So like, are you guys gonna be able to release a record? And we were like, no. And they're like, cool, I'll still book it. And it was like, awesome.
Okay.
So once again, one of those things was like, he had the connections and stuff, but he also just absolutely cared about us.
Yeah.
And like, is very invested in us and like cares a lot about us for no reason. I don't understand why he does. I appreciate it though. Like, he will go above and beyond for us. So he was able to set up a 4.5 week tour. We had like 28 shows. And it was insane. We were in like France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, like all these other places. I'd never been to Europe either. So it was like, it was really,
like, period.
Yeah, period. I'd never been. The only time I left the country
amazing.
was I went to Toronto with my brother after I graduated college.
Oh my God!
But,
so you going to Europe for the first time, and you're touring.
Oh yeah! So it was crazy, and it's really cool how like European venues and booking people treat you. I feel like when you tour the States, a lot of the venues and stuff just treat you like they're mad you're there.
Yeah.
Even if you're like packing it out, they're like, not going to do anything. But like in Europe, they're like, oh, we'll feed you, we'll give you a place to stay, yada yada yada. And it was like eating all these amazing foods. Like we were in Marseille, France, and they gave us these like amazing fish dumplings and this like fish curry or whatever. It was insanely good, and I was just free, got to eat, gave us a place to stay. It was amazing. So it was honestly a dream come true. It was a little stressful, and you feel like a fish out of water sometimes. But after like the first week, it kind of just got used to like how different everything is, and I was kind of like, oh, this is amazing. I was surprised about how many people knew who we were. Was weird because they'd be like mega fans, like singing like we were in like
that's amazing.
Oh yeah, we were in a small town in Germany. It's called Kusel, Germany, and there were people like singing the lyrics and like, but if you would talk to them, they could barely speak English, but they like knew the lyrics. They were signing autographs over in Europe, like in a bunch of the shows. Like one of the craziest ones was I spent my Juneteenth playing like this insane packed show in Paris, France, and it was like the whole floor of the venue was packed. They had like all these stairs going up and like balconies where people were packed. It was like insane. People were singing the lyrics. Like we brought a fan on stage to sing "If You Feel It" at parties because he like DM'd us and was like, can you bring me on stage or whatever to sing? And I was like, this is insane. This is crazy. Like people know who we are and like
oh my gosh,
are aware of the hype and stuff like that. And it was, I don't know, it's just crazy. I feel like every tour I come back and I'm like, that is wild. I had no idea that people knew who I was.
Well, so how dialed in are you though to like your Spotify analytics or like your Apple Music stuff, like to see where people are streaming the music?
Well, I feel like that's why I have two managers because they know all that stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I like we ship a lot of like overseas orders, vinyl orders and stuff, but like I feel like it still doesn't like compare to like seeing it because then I see it. I'm like,
of course, yeah.
I'm like, what? And even some of those countries, it's like we'll have like not that many Spotify people, but like I was like, how are y'all buying them off Bandcamp? Or like I don't understand, but like. It was cool. I am just very grateful that it happened. And, like, I'm still kind of, like, I haven't really processed it, really.
You need to take a break from touring so you can process
stuff. Clearly, because oh,
my gosh. Okay, well, so then maybe this next question I'm about to ask is, like, hashtag too soon. But, something that I think about a lot with artists touring is you've got to have a plan to get back to these markets, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so how are you thinking about going back to Europe and how have you thought about that just with your US touring too?
Yeah, well, I feel with the European tour we're already pretty slated to like go next year. We'll have a new record out by then, and we already talked to our booking person. He was like, love to bring you back next year. Let's like we're gonna get some like crazy shows because now you guys have like a tour under your belt.
Yep,
we're gonna be like way more like attractive to all the European markets. You know what I mean? We did pretty well for like a first tour. Touring in a difficult, because like June's like a weird time, a lot of festivals and stuff like that. So we toured in a weird time to be there. They didn't have a new record out or anything, and like did really well, and like we're able to pay all the expenses we would need to like renting gear, van, and stuff like that. And I'm like, that was just off our first one that shouldn't have gone as well as it did, and he is like excited to do another one because he's like, if that went well, just wait till we have like a new record and more time. So we're definitely gonna try to go back next year, like for sure. And then with the U.S., it's kind of weird with trying to get back to markets because it's like you don't want to spread yourself too thin, and it's costly to tour and stuff like that. So it's usually easier to have like a anchor point as like a festival or something like that to kind of get some guaranteed cash. But we got 2 more tours this year. I think Europe is our 3rd one this year. We have 2 more that are in kind of similar areas. We still haven't been able to tour the South. It's like every time I will route a tour, like we're gonna go South, guys. We'll get an email of like a tour offer, and I'm like, we can't say no to this. And I feel really bad because like half of our TikTok and Instagram comments is like, come to Florida, come to Georgia, and I'm like, we will. I
eventually,
promise. Yeah, I promise. But it's kind of like we try to like space it out a bit because a lot of like promoters don't want you playing the same places like constantly and kind of like having space between it. So we try to like at least hit some key markets we know are going to be good at least like once a year usually. Because like Brooke, like New York's really good for us, Chicago, stuff like that. So it's like good to try to like go because every time we go back to a place we've already been, there's like way more people usually.
Of course,
and not all the time though. There was this one time where it didn't work out that way.
The dark
stories. It was rough because it was we were on tour. It was actually around this time last year. Actually, we were on tour and we had just sold out Brooklyn. Like we just played a sold out show in Brooklyn. It was crazy. We were like, this is only our 2nd time in Brooklyn. The first time we packed the venue out. The 2nd time we played a different venue and sold it out, and we were like, holy smokes. And the next day we were playing Washington, D.C., which last time we played it was packed. Like it was like crazy packed. Like it was a struggle to get off the stage and get to like putting my guitar up. And then we played again, and there were like 4 people there, and it was awful. We were all just like, man, you ever just get brought down to earth so hard? It was like the day after.
From my perspective, again, like watching your trajectory, right? You've got 1 full-length album out, and you've been touring like crazy. And like I was telling you, earlier before we were filming, that I feel like Blvck Hippie has been touring since the birth of Blvck Hippie. Yeah. Like, it just feels like it's always been so, right? And so from an industry perspective, it's like you have this 1 album and you're touring the shit out of it. Yeah. And like you've referenced other like stuff that you're working on that you have a plan to release. But I want to talk about that strategy a little bit, because there, with how easy it is to put music out on streaming platforms now, there are definitely a lot of artists that take a totally reverse position, right? And they're maybe not touring at all, but they're just constantly releasing content. But obviously, we've already talked about this. Like, you go into these markets for the first time, and that music is it's a brand new experience for people. And so I just kind of want to get your view on the strategy for y'all around, releasing albums or not, and how much you tour a record, and then like creatively too.
Yeah. Well, I feel like when it comes to like spacing of albums, I feel like anyone that has to deal with me on the business side of music is probably kind of annoyed with me, because I don't know, I feel like we turned in to the label we dropped If You Want a Party Time, we turned it in like at the last possible second to turn in, and then the same thing with this record didn't get done until like mixing and mastering until like maybe a week before we went to Europe. Like, it's like a lot of things are like fresh, like a couple of weeks before we went to Europe. So a lot of it is just like I like taking my time with writing, and I feel like you have to kind of look at like what you want from your career and what you want from your art, and like not pay attention to like what people say is the best strategy, because there's so many arguments against like why you should never do singles, or why you should only do singles, or why you should never do albums, or why you should only do albums, why you should only do EPs. There's a million of those, and I feel like the people that like follow the trends in a way that is successful for them, I have mad respect for. I feel like following trends isn't like cringe. I feel like we're all playing like the game in some capacity. You have to play the game in some way. Like, if you don't, then you can keep making songs for like your 3 neighbors. You know what I mean? You have to like,
it's a tree falling in the woods at that point.
So I feel like for the people that like make a lot of songs but don't tour, if they never really have a desire to tour, only want to tour when things are like not as crappy, you know what I mean? I feel like I totally understand why they do that. And the reverse order, I feel like with us, we had a good record, and when we finished it, I feel like I needed to kind of go under like, I don't know, I was like, I guess to dial it back with the creativity part of it, with spacing the things out. I feel like after we did our EP that came out in 2019, I was in a really bad writing funk. Like, I couldn't write. Like, I think Technicolor and Answer Machine came out of that period of time, but like the finalized lyrics weren't until like way closer to when we actually recorded the record. I think I freestyled the lyrics, the verses to Answer Machine, because I was just like, I didn't like anything I wrote, so I was like, you know what, we're just gonna do it in the studio, we'll figure it out. But I wasn't really writing anything I liked, and I didn't feel like very connected to what I was doing or to art in general. And I feel like parties, the whole process of If You Want at Parties was me learning how to write again, and learning how to like love what I love, making music again. So I feel like with the upcoming record, I almost said the name, which that was close. So with the upcoming record, I feel like I wanted to take my time with it. I feel like I don't like rushing things. I feel like I've sacrificed enough and put enough effort to earn the ability to take my time. And I feel like I would much rather become irrelevant, taking too long to tour off the same record, than rush a record that isn't something I actually enjoy and like.
Yeah.
Because I feel like with like making art, it's kind of like having a kid in some capacity, which for anyone knows, I have a child, so I'm not just saying that oblivious. I know it's not the same, it doesn't equate the same.
Right.
But in a sense, in my mind, it does. And I feel like you want your kid to have the best chance at life. So you want your record to have the best chance, or your art to have the best chance it can have. And usually marinating it, or like sitting on it more, taking more time to figure out the visuals for the record, taking more time to like, oh, maybe I need to change this. I really wanted to like mull over it as much as possible. And that's kind of like my strategy with writing. So it feels like we have to have a release plan, and like in terms of records that fit how I feel comfortable writing.
Yeah.
And I feel and like the best way I write is demoing constantly. Like the song If You Want at Parties has like 7 versions. Like I like sitting on things a lot.
Yeah.
Because then I can listen to it. And my favorite thing is like make a bunch of different versions of something and then figure out which parts of each version stick. and you're like, ooh, okay, so this worked here, let's pull that in here. Because I kind of mending things together as opposed to just writing straight sometimes. Like sometimes I can write a whole song, it's like, oh yeah, it's straight, but other times I'm like 6 months or something like that. You know what I mean? I like sitting on things as much as I can. So I feel like, sadly, I feel bad for our managers having to deal with me being difficult, but it works better for me creatively.
I mean, it seems to be working out professionally too.
Yeah,
like,
and that's just like, I am blessed and lucky that it is working professionally because it's the only way I know how to do what I do. I feel like the weirdest thing about artists is people forget that like they're people. And people change, people evolve. People always hate people's new stuff or yada yada. But the rate at which you evolve, I think, as an artist, personally, can be really fast. I don't think all the time, because I feel like there's a lot of emotionally stunted people that are artists and like don't really change. But you know what I mean? It's like, because you have to if you're writing for like how I write, which is like a lot of life experience based on like how my internal struggles and stuff like that. I feel like you're constantly reevaluating who you are. So you're constantly trying to evolve in some way. So like who I am now isn't even who I was when I wrote our new record that's not out yet. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm like past that. Where you always end up writing and you end up past it at some point. So it is difficult, and you have to find ways to be able to perform it still authentically and stuff like that. And I feel like that's something I've struggled with by touring off a record for so long. It's just like, how do I still love something I've played for so long? How do I still feel those same emotions? And I feel like the only way I've been able to get through it is just the fact that we have like fans. And like they care about that stuff. Like they're like, I've listened to this song a million times and I get to see you sing it to me. So like when I look out, like we were in Edinburgh, Scotland, and this girl like was like crying because we weren't gonna play Last Words, but we ended up playing because she had asked. I like Sorry before she like, and she was like, we started playing and she's like tapping her friend. She's like in tears, and I was just like, it made that song fun. We hadn't played that song in like months, and it was like I was like, it's not about. I feel like it can be about yourself when you're creating it, but once you start touring off and then playing it, has to be
about other people.
Exactly. And I feel like that's the only way we've been able to like be okay with it. And I'm just glad that like, as I said, it's worked out so well, especially even getting to tour Europe with an old record. But I feel like the time between album 1 and album 2 is not going to be a consistent thing. I feel like I don't want to jinx it by saying it out loud, but I feel like during the recording of the last record, of the new record, during the recording of that, I feel like I kind of reached a new level artistically in terms of like how I create, and it's become like breathing. So I feel like it's not going to be a consistent thing of spacing it out, but it's all just a reflection of my writing process and less about like what we think will work. And we're just extremely so lucky that it just happened to work out in a way that like I'm able to like take my time with art, and then it leads to being successful, and also helped that like our vinyls came late. So like it got to be like a
it gives you like a reason. Absolutely. And I mean, look, I don't think you should discount that. You know, you are a big part of this in terms of like you've obviously honed a really great live show, or you wouldn't be able to have the touring success that you've had, and to be able to continue touring off of an album that is old, whoever it's however all that gets decided, but like you've built something that is allowing that to happen. It also helps that like playing these songs for so long, we get to like really hone like our live show. As you said, our live show, we are a different beast live. We are like, we have a whole different energy live that I feel like, because people listen to the record and then book us, and then they see us and they're like, oh, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're like a lot more. But we play faster, we play more aggressive, a lot more like, I feel like a lot of everyone's adjacencies and like closeness to like punk and hardcore scenes, like because everybody in the band has like some kind of like attachment to it. I mean, our drummer's like a metal drummer, like, you know what I mean? So like everybody's got an attachment. I like a lot of that comes out with the live shows now, where it's like a whole different kind of beast. And I feel like I'm glad that we were able to do all that and have that opportunity. But also at the same time, I'm kind of tired of touring off the same record. But that's my fault. Sounds like it's coming now. Oh yeah, it's coming. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I want you to just, of course, this is the Music Export Memphis Export 101 podcast. So to talk a little bit about what the grant support that you've gotten from MEM has allowed you to do. I know you've gotten ambassador grants from us, but you've funded merch as well. And just, what has that done for you as you build your career? I feel like it's kind of like, well, I feel like before I go into that, I will say I feel like my favorite thing about the grant in general is it's something that not every city has. Like we'll be playing in like bigger markets or whatever, and we'll be telling us like, oh, like how are you able to do this? I was like, oh, well, like we save up some money and then like we'll get like some grants, and they're like, you have grants? It's like, yeah, like Memphis has like grants that like help with merch and like yada yada. And they're like,
what? And I'm like, we'll be in like Seattle. I'm like, this is a music city. But like a lot of those grants either get eaten up by other stuff or like they don't have as many like of them available. And I'm like, it's like a rare thing, which I think is really cool. But it's been like a huge help to us. I feel like with touring, owning a vehicle that you tour, and there's so many pop-up expenses where it's like, oh man, we need oil change in Rhode Island, or we need yada yada yada, or like gear malfunctions. Like we've had so much gear malfunctions on tour, and so much of that grant money is like going towards, oh, all right, so we got to change tubes on this amp, or like that's 6 weeks. We went on I guess our first like serious, I guess second time we ever got a touring grant. Like that touring grant paid for so many things. We had like a kick pedal break day 1 of tour. We had 2 different amps go out like on that tour, like mine and the other guitar players' amps. We had to get new tubes for. There was like some bass issues, but all that stuff gets like, you don't have that cushion when you're like touring on your own. But when you have like a grant that like gives you money to tour, then it's like, okay, cool. Well, like I can upfront this cost because my back is covered, or we don't have the money to cover this cost. We can pull from here. Grant. So like for a while we were only splitting money like door deals, yada yada. We split that money and pay everybody every night. But then because of like our band doing more like better, and then having money from Export Memphis, we've been able to pay people weekly food stipends.
That is so cool.
Which is like the only way we have that money is like Export Memphis money. So now everybody gets paid food money. So no one has to like worry about, oh man, I got to come out of my own pocket to eat. Yeah. Like we've gone on tours, we come back and everybody's well fed, everybody already paid rent, yada yada yada, and that's because of like grant money and stuff like that. And I think it's like I feel like an underused resource sometimes for people, because like I didn't know about Export Memphis until like early 2020. You know what I mean? And like every time I tell people about it, I like shout it from the rooftops. I'm like, you guys don't realize this is how we're able to do this, because people are like, oh, you have managers, oh, you have this. Like, no, we have managers. They're really great, but like they're not like, they didn't like manage Paul McCartney. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like you have to use all the resources. It's really nice having like a local resource that cares about you as an artist and cares about you being a Memphis artist, and they give you money for that. Yeah. And in exchange for like really nothing. You know what I mean? It's just like they just
doing what you were going to do anyway, which is tell everybody you're from Memphis.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you guys on the internet, and when is that album coming out?
Okay, so where to find us on the internet? We are Blvck Hippie, spelled BLVCKHIPPIE. You type that into any streaming site. You have our music. You put a 901 at the end of that. You got us on all socials. We go back on tour. There's one tour that's not announced, but I can talk about another tour. We go on tour with the emo band Free Throw and Prince Daddy and the Hyena. The tour starts. We start on November 17th, and they added a last-minute Memphis show. So we'll be playing Black Lodge the 30th of November.
Awesome.
It's all ages, and you can come see us play a bunch of new stuff.
Because the only way to
like hear the new stuff is going to be at live shows, because we're not really going to drop the record until next year.
Okay.
But we are planning on dropping a single from that record before this tour starts.
All
right. So be on the lookout for that, because there will be more new music coming, and there's a very good chance that our third record will be dropping pretty close to the second record. We'll see. Or closer than at least 2-3 years.
Okay. Okay. All right. That sounds good. That's a promise I feel like you can probably keep. Yeah.
Possibly. But if I don't release that, wipe this from the internet.
Sure. No problem. We'll delete all of this. Yes. No one will ever know. Thank you so much, Josh, for being
thank you
here.
For having
me. This has been an awesome conversation. And yeah, thanks for sharing your story.
Well, thank you for listening.